There's a part of you that no one has ever met. It doesn't wear the smile you use at work. It doesn't speak the language of kindness or diplomacy. It doesn't give a damn about your goals, your values, or your vision board. It watches, it waits, and it feeds. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the part of you that you've buried alive, not because it was evil, but because it was inconvenient, too angry, too sexual, too arrogant, too powerful, too honest. And now, all that unlived life, it's starving. You've spent your entire life managing perception, playing the role, smoothing the edges, being nice, being humble, being palatable. And while you're busy starving your shadow of expression, it's been feasting on your soul. This is why you lash out when you're not yourself. This is why your addictions whisper when you're alone. This is why your smile feels like a mask that's starting to crack. Because the shadow doesn't die when you ignore it. It festers. And eventually, it eats you from the inside out. Jung didn't say, destroy your darkness. He said, you do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You think you're the good guy. You think you're the sane one. You think you're evolved. But that unevolved version of you, the one who wanted to dominate, to rage, to seduce, to break the rules, to take up space, to matter, that version didn't disappear. He's just been locked in the basement, banging on the walls of your dreams. You've been feeding your shadow the scraps of your life. And now it's starting to bite back. If you've ever asked yourself, why do I feel fake? Why do I self-sabotage? Why do I hate myself when I'm alone? This is why. You've become too good at pretending, too skilled at performance, too afraid of your own depth. The world has taught you to amputate parts of your soul, to fit, to survive, to be chosen. But what happens when the part of you you've denied the longest starts demanding to be seen? You feel it, don't you? The rumble, the hunger, the growl beneath the surface. Your shadow is starving. And if you don't feed it consciously, it will devour you unconsciously. This is not a warning. It's a reckoning. Welcome to the fire. They told you to be good, to be kind, to be respectful, to be soft, to be safe. And you believed them. Because you were a boy raised by a system that fears men with teeth. A society that calls power toxic, anger immature, dominance abusive, and masculinity problematic. So you internalized a lie. That to be a good man is to be a harmless one. You became obedient, cooperative, supportive, pleasant. But deep down, you began to rot. Because every time you smiled when you wanted to scream, every time you agreed just to keep the peace, every time you betrayed your instincts for approval, you weren't healing. You were hollowing out. You call it growth. Jung would have called it spiritual possession. You became possessed by the image of a man you thought others would love. But it wasn't you. It was a mask stitched from shame. Your father's disapproval, your mother's fear, your teacher's control, your ex-girlfriend's guilt. Piece by piece, they carved a version of you they could manage. And you called it maturity. But it was never your soul. Just a socially acceptable simulation of it. And that simulation came at a cost. You lost your edges. You lost your danger. You lost yourself. Carl Jung said, in each of us, there is another whom we do not know. And that unknown self, the wild, untamed, instinctual self, that's where your vitality lives. Not in your moral posture. Not in your emotional vocabulary. Not in your self-help bookshelf. In the chaos. In the contradiction. In the parts you've exiled for being too much. You feel empty not because something is wrong with you, but because something is missing. And that something is the raw, unfiltered essence of who you were before the world told you how to behave. So you keep trying to fill the void with productivity, porn, praise, partners, protein shakes. But it never works. Because the problem isn't what you're lacking. It's what you're rejecting. Your emptiness is not a malfunction. It's a message. And until you stop clinging to the light, you'll never meet the part of you that lives in the dark. This is why the world rewards your emptiness. It calls you emotionally intelligent for being agreeable. It calls you spiritual for being soft. It calls you mature for being passive. But Jung didn't want you to become safe. He wanted you to become sovereign. That only happens when you stop fearing your shadow and start inviting it home. You feel empty because you've mistaken domestication for discipline, and your soul is starving for its own return. You've spent your whole life trying to be a good man. But Carl Jung never told you to be good. He told you to be whole. And there's a difference. A good man is predictable, safe, soft, socially approved. A good man betrays himself in the name of harmony. But a whole man? He is not polite. He is principled. He is not always agreeable. He is aligned. He does not seek to be liked. He seeks to be true. That's why wholeness feels dangerous. Because the forbidden self you locked in the basement, he's been lifting in the dark. And when he returns, he doesn't knock. He kicks in the door with your unapologetic voice, your unfiltered truth, your ancient instincts. And suddenly you feel alive again. Not entertained, not productive, alive. But here's the problem. You're terrified of becoming him. Because if you do, you'll lose the approval of everyone who only loves your mask. You'll no longer fit in. You'll become intolerable to people who prefer your compliance. And this is the cost of individuation. You think repression means forgetting, that hiding your rage, your lust, your pride somehow makes you noble. But Jung warned us. What you repress does not disappear. It waits, and when it waits long enough, it begins to possess you. Not like a demon in a horror film. Worse, like a silent influence in your every choice. You say yes when you mean no. You avoid confrontation to protect your image. You apologize for things that don't require forgiveness. You keep peace externally while declaring war on yourself. That is possession. You are no longer acting from your center. You're playing a role to be palatable, and you wonder why you feel empty. Let me make this clear. Every part of you that you exile becomes your jailer. Your anger? You buried it. Now you can't draw boundaries. Your pride? You repressed it. Now you can't own your power. Your lust? You labeled it toxic. Now it leaks out in shame, addiction, secrecy. You thought repression was moral. It was cowardice. Because you weren't exiling darkness. You were exiling yourself. The shadow isn't evil. It's everything you are that you were told not to be. And the longer you deny it, the louder it screams through your actions, your relationships, your failures. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You keep calling it bad luck. She left you. Your boss overlooked you. Your life feels stagnant. But none of this is fate. It's feedback. You are being haunted by the version of you that you refuse to meet. The one who doesn't ask permission to speak. The one who walks into a room with weight. The one who knows what he wants and does not apologize for it. That version is not dangerous because he's violent. He's dangerous because he is whole. And wholeness, in a world built on compliance, is the ultimate threat. You can't become who you truly are and still be loved for who you never were. So what do most men do? They go back to sleep. They trade fire for comfort. They choose being chosen over becoming. But you, if you're still here, you're done with that. You are tired of being tolerated. You are tired of translating your soul into polite language. You are tired of negotiating your essence. You are ready to be hated for your truth, rather than loved for your performance. This is the shift, from outer approval to inner authority, from chasing love to embodying presence, from performing masculinity to living it. You don't need therapy. You need a funeral, one that buries the version of you that played by the rules of a broken world. Because when that man dies, something sacred is resurrected. Not a new you, the real you, the one who was always there, watching silently, from beneath the script. Jung said, in all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order. But you've been taught to fear chaos, to medicate it, manage it, suppress it. No one ever told you how to master it. Because true power doesn't come from controlling your environment. It comes from commanding yourself. Not by force, not by noise, but by silence. Stillness is the strike. Not passivity, presence. Not retreat, restraint. In a world that worships reaction, a man who doesn't flinch becomes terrifying. Not because he's cruel, but because he's free. Free from performance. Free from seeking. Free from the compulsive need to be understood. And this is where men misunderstand power. You think dominance is volume. It's not. It's silence that cannot be penetrated. It's gaze that doesn't ask for permission. It's refusal to explain yourself to people who never intended to understand you. Jung would call this sovereignty, the opposite of obedience, the opposite of validation addiction, the refusal to let your soul be defined by the projections of others. And make no mistake, when you become still, you will provoke the possessed. People will call you arrogant, cold, disconnected. But you're not disconnected. You've just disconnected from the script. And once you've unplugged, you become dangerous in the best way. Untouchable, not because you hide, but because you've stopped performing. And now, the weight of your presence makes people nervous because you're no longer the man they can mold. You are not their therapist. You are not their savior. You are not their fantasy. You are a mirror. And a man who mirrors without mercy will be rejected by the masses and revered by the few. This is your weapon. Not charm, not intellect, not bravado, but stillness. A man who holds his ground, internally, psychologically, spiritually, is a man who cannot be seduced, cannot be manipulated, cannot be played. You asked why you feel empty, and now you know. It's not because you are broken. It's because you have betrayed your becoming. You've worn the mask so long. You forgot the shape of your own face. You've lived for her gaze. You've contorted for their praise. You've smiled for comfort and silenced your chaos. And now what's left? A hollow echo of a man, afraid to make noise unless it earns applause. Carl Jung warned us. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But privilege requires pain. Becoming costs everything that isn't real. So here you are, at the edge. You can keep polishing the mask. Keep role-playing the man you think will be loved. Keep shrinking yourself into something safe, digestible, obedient. Or, you can burn it. The whole thing. The stories. The expectations. The fantasy of being enough for anyone but yourself. That fire will hurt. You will lose people. You will disappoint women who were in love with your performance. You will feel the cold of walking alone. But in that cold, in that brutal silence, you will finally hear your own voice again. Not the voice that begs to be seen. Not the one that rehearses what to say. The one that has been buried, waiting to rise. And when it does, you won't need to be chosen. You won't crave to be desired. You'll stop looking for salvation in the eyes of others. You'll realize that emptiness wasn't a flaw. It was an invitation to strip away everything that was never yours. You'll become real, not perfect, not performative, but rooted. And from that place, love becomes sacred, not because it fills you, but because it meets you, whole to whole, shadow to shadow, truth to truth. No projections, no puppets, no performance, just presence. So choose comfort or becoming, performance or presence, addiction or authorship. You can keep waiting for someone to validate your worth, or you can become the man. Carl Jung spent his life trying to awaken. You're not a victim. You are a volunteer, but you don't have to be anymore. So if this hit you, don't scroll. Sit in the silence. Feel the burn. And when the voice of truth returns, don't run from it. Speak it. Live it. Stand in it. That's how you become free. And when you're ready, share this with the next man who's still sleepwalking. We need fewer performers, more mirrors, more men who walk the path of individuation, more men who choose to become whole, even if it costs them everything false. You're not empty. You're just not finished. Let the work begin.